Welcome to The Courageous Choice, a podcast about what it really takes to lead at the edge of change. Because here's the truth, strategy isn't enough anymore. The world of work is moving faster than ever, and the leaders who stand out aren't the ones with all the answers. They're the ones willing to make bold decisions in moments of uncertainty. This podcast is about those moments, about those leaders, and because leadership today isn't about certainty, it's about courage. The courage to see differently, act decisively, and step forward anyway. Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Courageous Choice. We're excited this morning to welcome a friend and a mentor of mine, Barb Croll. Barb is a believer in authenticity, bravery, and candor. She's the Chief People Officer at Orange County's Credit Union with experience delivering strategic initiatives in dynamic environments. She's also an ICF accredited coach with the Hudson Institute. Over the years, she's won several awards for her culture work, leadership, innovation, and contributions. And if you're at the NHRA in Orange County, she's up this year for HR Executive of the Year. Her passions are elevating the employment experience for everyone, instilling and nurturing great leadership practices, and helping humans navigate their own life experiences, both professionally and personally. Welcome, Barb. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie. Very exciting to be here.
Yeah. You and I were chatting about this as we were preparing, and we were like, oh, we're going to get to have this conversation with others, and how do we make it relevant? But I love that we always end up going deep. So just a fair warning to whoever might be listening. We don't know where this is going to go, but it usually ends up somewhere pretty meaningful.
Yeah, love that. By the way, that's a gift for us, and we'll share it today.
We'll share it today. Yeah, no, it's true. It's something I treasure. So, we kind of wanted to frame this episode of The Courageous Choice. We think about leadership, we think about how things are changing really fast. And you and I have known each other, gosh, I think over 20 years. So we think about
Mhm.
the journey, that we've each been on in regards to our own leadership effectiveness, our style, our comfort, confidence. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the role that fear has played in our lives, and how that's affected our leadership. And I think that as we know that the one of the fundamentals for effective leaders is to really understand themselves and to
Yeah.
do that core work. You and I both did it as part of the Hudson process. But as we think about that today, and we start thinking about leadership, I'd love to dive in with you. So you shared some things with me. Maybe share with the audience kind of your own journey as you think about leadership.
Yeah, I probably shared a little too deep with you, like I normally do. But um, I we were talking actually in the car. I think it was a Saturday morning about this, and I think it really hit both of us in that I think about kind of the midpoint of my career where I was my feet were firmly grounded. I was finding some success, and when I think about it now, there was such a fear of losing that. And, both professionally and personally, because, jobs are what supports us and lets us create a lifetime, hopefully of happiness. And so that job, yes, it's a career, but at the end of the day, it's a job too. And I think back then worked in a state of fear because I could not lose that job because I thought about supporting myself and being a single executive at that point in my life. Um, and it's really fascinating as you get older. And what we were talking about in the car is now my biggest fear is mortality, as you get older. And so it shifts. And it's fascinating that I don't have the fear in my work anymore. Now it's the fear of what is my legacy, you know,
Oh, interesting.
right? What am I leaving behind? And what are people going to think of when they hear my name if I'm no longer here? Um, and then, really, the most courageous thing we have to do at that point, and I think it transitions into the mid career if we're really working on it. And like you said, we're aware of it, right? But now it's like, that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. There's no way around it. And doing the work of, especially as a leader, how do I get through this? Not past it, not around it, but through it. And how do I use it actually to coach and lead others into, let's lose the fear because we're working in our reptilian brain. I like to say to my team all the time, are we in our reptilian brain? We're only in the frontal lobe because that's what fear does to us. And the truth is, if we acknowledge it and we can work through it, we're better leaders because we're using the whole experience, the whole brain power, the whole team. We're accepting diversity of thought. We're open. So, see, I'm on my soapbox already, but
No,
it's it's really powerful when you understand and can recognize that fear and then use the tools that you've acquired to get through it and say, I'm not my best when I'm in fear. And I need to find a spot of courage, whatever small spot of courage that is, and move forward.
So, okay, let's walk people through the arc a little bit because I can remember 2009. Some people have heard this story. I'm sitting in my office and I was just disconnected. But if you had said to me, like, I think, you're leading with fear or fear is playing a role, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't think of myself that way. I don't think I showed up in many ways. I didn't show up that way externally, but fear was definitely driving, and it was like a force that was shown affecting how I showed up. So when you think about how that shows up, how does that if a leader maybe is operating from a place of fear, but they don't know it, like it's one thing when I'm anxious about something or upset. But if you're not aware, what are some things that you might recommend that either could be indicators that they could think of or just they might be able to notice it in others that could be showing up if someone's kind of operating from fear?
Yeah, great question. The first thing that comes to mind when I find a leader in fear is really quickly that I don't want to accept change. I want to remain stagnant. I am safe where I'm currently at. And that's what I find the most with leaders when, and by the way, when you tell someone, especially in a leadership capacity, that they're in fear, it is quick denial because, right? Like you were saying, if I said that to you in 2009, you would have been like, what are you talking about? I'm successful. I'm sitting here in this gorgeous office. I have an amazing team. I have friends, I have family. I'm not in fear, right? And the reality is, we're all in fear all the time, right? And I think what's happening now, which is fascinating, is because technology is coming in so fast, we are overloaded, and an overloaded brain automatically goes into fear because of fight or flight. So right now, it's even worse. And because of that, people are more in denial, even. It's like, no, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. Right. And we all know the outside world is pressing in on work more than it ever has, the mental health crisis that we're seeing. And a lot of that stems from that fear. So it's interesting, though, when you break down the fear. I'm actually thinking about a client I had recently and say, you know, what is that fear? What does it look like? What does it taste like? What word describes it? And just recently, the word that came out was shame. And, my fear is actually being shamed. And it was when you get, that direct with someone of, what is the fear? Oh, the first, well, I don't want to lose my job. Okay, well, why? Tell me what would happen. Well, I'd probably be okay. I'd find another job. I'd move on. But when you dig deeper, quite often I find, especially for an executive who's successful, the shame that happens after something like that is really the biggest fear. And how do we work through, it's funny because you look at Brene Brown's work, so powerful. I remember sitting in my pool, floating, reading, and in tears. I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much shame. And my biggest fear was, if that shame is brought forward, right, I'm going to have to deal with something that's super powerful and crushing. And that's what I think I find when I talk to people about fear. It's the shame of even saying there is a fear
Right.
or just acknowledging it.
Yeah, I I'm getting chills. No, it's really true. So it's like, first of all, fear serves us, right? Like when we need to run from a lion or
Right.
there's
We need it.
something bad, like
Right.
fear is not bad. And even though I have a personal mission to eradicate fear, it's really the unhealthy application of fear that I would like to
Right.
try to still run from the lion, or maybe don't. I don't know what the advice is with the lion, but you know what I mean. So the so Okay, so fear, when you like, I love what you're saying, right? If we're making decisions even from a CYA or trying to not lose our job perspective, we're going to just by naturally maybe not say the thing that needs to be said
Mhm.
or not be willing to take what's a perceived risk. And depending on the work environment, and right now they're all in some level of change at a systemic level. So if we have leaders supposed to be leading us through and they're personally fear at whatever level, you can imagine how that's the effect that that's going to have organizationally, right? Which is pretty significant.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when you were talking about the opening, you were saying, Barb, that courage and candor are really important. And candor is another powerful word there because you just said, if you're in fear, you won't say what's top of mind for you. You won't dispute something. You won't take on something that could be uncomfortable. And I've really found in coaching is helping people get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, sit in it. Like literally picture yourself in a kiddie pool and you're sitting and uncomfortable and acknowledging at that point that that doesn't mean that you are not candid. It means you're carefully candid, whatever that means to you, right?
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable in a boardroom or an executive session speaking up, at least do it one on one. At least, I always tell people that courage is not huge steps, courage is small steps. I have a plaque in my office that I just live by, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it basically says, courage is the voice that tells you to go home and come back tomorrow with a new plan. And that's what I hope to instill in people because you're right. I don't think I'm ever going to take the fear away because we need a healthy portion of it to stay alive, right? But allowing people to understand that that fear shouldn't be a trigger, it should be a glimmer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't go into bad behavior, you go into good behavior. Okay, I'm fearful. What am
That's
I
right.
fearful of, right? What am I
Right.
scared of? What's the worst that could happen?
So you said, to go through it, and it made me think about grief and
Mm.
I had a really great, when I was dealing when my dad died, I was struggling and I said, "Is this normal?" And they said, "Yes." And I go, "Well, that sucks." And then and then I said, they said it's like we're in California. They said it's like being in the waves, right? You're not in control. They're not consistent. And you can't if you fight the wave, you're gonna get really tired. You just have to, like, go with it. You can go under it, you can go but, like, you just have to kinda go with it. And then eventually you'll kinda get through it. I'm like, "Okay." I mean, that doesn't sound fun, but I believe you, and it was true. When you think kinda the going through it, from a fear perspective, is it similar to that, or do you have a different analogy maybe?
Oh, for grief?
Well, just as it relates to fear, because I think it's kind of a similar feeling around
Yeah.
you said we have to just sit with it or be willing to go through it rather than avoid.
Yeah, listen, I talk a lot about grief too. I've had tremendous amount of grief in my life and have learned to actually make it a strength versus a weakness, and it's been a very powerful journey for me. And I will tell you, I think fear and grief are very similar emotions. Um, you know, grief doesn't ever really leave us. And so that, when they tell you that it's a wave that never ends, that's true. It pops back up,
Right.
you're like, where'd that tsunami come from, man? It was calm, what's going on? Um, and so I think it's really fascinating to find a way to turn when that fear happens, that acknowledgement that it is also some form of grief. It is a form of grief because that's a piece of it. Like if quite often we think of grief as only when we lose a loved one, and it's so much more than that. There's grief over getting old. There's, grief over physical changes in our body, things we can't do anymore. There's grief over a career ending, and not knowing what that next beginning is. And, there's a lot of discussion about the bonus round, and I'm finding a lot of that actually in coaching, and people fearful of leaving a career because they don't have an identity,
They
path.
don't know what. Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
identity. Oh,
there's nowhere to
yeah.
go, right?
Yeah.
And so I think those are so intertwined, and it's interesting because I actually in the coaching side of my life, I bring up grief to people. Like I'll actually ask, "Are you grieving that change, whatever that change is?" And that word is so difficult for people. They're like, "No, I'm not in grief." And I'm like, "Are you sure? Let's go in a little deeper."
Don't
And it's
necessarily
fine.
really know what it is until
Yeah.
you know what it is. It's this really
Say it.
interesting thing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's funny because I'm having a ton of these conversations right now. We talk about, I call it the executive entrepreneurs that are part of gig talent that have intentionally left corporate to do
Mm,
whatever it is to do. And for many of them, it is that second act or bonus round or whatever, or preferment where they do what they prefer. Um, so whether they're people who have just made the leap or considering making the leap, or even other friends that are kind of in the last 5 years of
mm,
um, corporate and they're making a plan. And what's interesting is like I there's one who's lead a big job internal and he's like, I'm just fearless. Like I'm just fearless. Like he this awareness of like, if they fire me and that my plan from 3 years goes to now, like, okay, like I'm not designing it that way, but I also, it's about legacy. And so he's stepping into a different boldness than he might have had earlier in his career. And we get that a lot, like when clients come to us, because the outside view, we don't have that political like fear that we're going to lose, right? Like if you don't like what I have to say. So we obviously you can't come and be a jerk, but it's really about coming and adding value and seeing things that others don't see. And you can, so that example of an internal leader doing it, our consultants doing it, but it's really powerful, and I think that the for leaders who are wanting to evolve, it's like, how can just supporting them in unlocking that impact,
mhm.
um, at whatever stage they are, because, the right environment is gonna support people who are truth tellers and are constructively trying to move the agenda forward in a healthy way and support transformation or whatever the goal of the organization is, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. The executive you're talking about, I'm actually in that stage of my life as well. Like probably, corporate America, 40 plus years, long time, you know, and really in the last 3 years for me as well. And I have found, I would tell you, I'm fearless right now when it comes to leadership. I have no fear of losing a job, right? I have have worked hard and built a great life. What a difference it would make if we could turn that environment into any space for a leader at any age, at any stage,
100%.
right? Like just because people will say to me, "Well, but what you said, I could not say because I have a career ahead of me." Like they're like, "How did you have the courage to say that or call that out?" And I'm like, "You have to understand, I don't have the same. I hate the word shackles, but I don't have the same political shackles anymore." I'm like, I am in a free spot. I gotta get at a jail card right now. That's amazing, and could make a change at any time. And that's my goal too, Jamie. That's interesting. Is from a coaching perspective, I want to set people free in a respectful, lovely, warm, loving manner. Right? You
Yeah,
can say what you want to say. But it's that point of losing. I Others are judging me too,
right.
you know?
Well, okay. So, you know me, I'm always trying to attack it from both angles. So,
Right.
totally agree at the individual level. Am I Pollyanna to want to fix the system so that
Mm.
it encourages everyone to do that?
I don't think you're Pollyanna. I wouldn't use that. I'd say I'd use the word aspirational. It's not gonna happen overnight though, and it's not gonna be easy, and it's probably work that's never done. Um,
Right.
I think the human condition is that we're hardwired for survival, right? It's just a different type of survival, and I think when we started this, we were talking about all the changes coming. And I will tell you that I don't think it's Pollyanna because the work that you're talking about is what's going to build great leaders in a very distinguishedly multifaceted time because technology has sped everything up so fast that we're being asked to make decisions with actually less data, even though we have more data because we don't have time. Right? So it's fascinating. We got, all the AI and, automation and everything coming in, and I love it. I mean, I personally love it. I creativity wise, I think it's helped me sometimes, but we're because of the competition right now to be successful in the business world, you're actually going to be asked to make decisions with less data at a quicker pace. So the trust component, which is I think what we're getting down to here a little bit too, is you're going to have trust in your leaders. You're going to have trust in the leadership team. There's going to have to be that work. So I would never say it's Pollyanna. I think it's actually critical for people to succeed in the future. And I think it's escalating.
Yeah, I agree. I this and it's I think the answer is both levels. Like even if you are at an organization where your leaders are willing to address it at a systemic level, you have to support, the individuals, kind of meet them where they're at through that. And that
Mm.
can look different. Like maybe with the senior leaders, it's one-on-one coaches, and then maybe you have like peer circles or there's other ways to do it that doesn't always have to be like outside people all the time. I think it's about building that internal capability, but setting a vision of like that's where we want to go and maybe some operating agreements under that about what that looks like. And then just try it's like you said, it's not a destination, it's a journey, but I I think it's required, we now if organizations want to have real connections with the people that are part of their organization and get them to be able to be optimized, but two, like to not have waste. There's so much waste.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it too, and it's funny because I think you and I are pulling out some really powerful words here, but I think there's a lot of us are striving for perfection as well, and I think that's perfection is impossible, so we're setting ourselves up for failure. So,
Yeah.
you know,
What word would you use instead? I use like collective experiment, but I don't know.
yeah, I'm dabbling with the Kaizen principles right now. I'm really, kind of returning to some old tools, which is really interesting. I think Kaizen for me helps me explain the kind of the world. So I work in the finance business. So we talk about, exponential interest income. It's like the big, it saves us basically.
Yeah.
And then you take that exponential and you put it into the world, right? And everything's coming at us so fast that it's exponential. Technology is exponential. And then Kaizen comes in with this very simple principle of what would it look like if every one of us made ourselves better by 1% every day, right? So it's those tiny movements that are going to help, and that's courage too. It's so funny, it all
Right.
starts to gel together there because it's like if I could adapt the no perfection, if I could manage my fear, not get rid of it, but manage it, and I could concentrate on the small movement and how that builds, I'm going to become a better leader, right? But it's interesting because the perfection then sneaks in because they're like, but that's not good enough, right?
All right.
Right. So it's like, how do I
Better than it was
better
yesterday.
than it was this way, right? And I think, and that's a really powerful conversation that I have noticed lately because I've been talking a lot about this lately because I'm trying to help people settle in. Just settle in, stop panicking, understand that this is the world and you can't control it, but you can thrive and survive, right? It's all a lot of it's a mindset of, I actually thought about, something that comes up in coaching all the time too is why are we letting the small voices in our head tell it's not enough
Yeah.
when it is, right? And I made a decision, it didn't go perfectly. The question I should be asking myself, and I actually am self-coaching, quite a bit lately, is, did I do my very best today? And if the answer is yes, then that's a good answer.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
And you used the word exponential, and you think about if leaders can start to unlock this for themselves,
Mhm.
the exponential impact of being able to have that conversation with someone on their team around like I get you're beating yourself up on this, but like it's okay. So
Yeah.
that you how do we become aware of that voice that isn't serving us or the story that we're believing, right? And so I love that idea of exponential. We use it in HR about how do you start to have exponential impact by helping people solve their own problems and asking more
Right.
important questions. But
Yeah.
exponential leadership for sure,
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
Yeah. And it's funny because you see people when they do get it, there's the most I was actually telling my lovely husband Jan, who always comes up whenever I talk about anything, but I was telling him it's such a beautiful moment for me in my, professional life, be it, as a head of HR or as a coach, that moment when a leader at any level, the light that hits their eyes when they're like, "Whoa, what did you just say? Wait a minute." You know, if I did my best today, that's enough. Like, you know, and it's such a weird because you think, gosh, that should be really simple. But that inner chatter, we listen to it way too much. And I think that's my goal, the legacy that I look at is how do I help people turn that down? Just turn it down, you
I
know?
love it. I love it. Well, you and I literally could talk all day,
I
and
know.
maybe will. But if I want to leave, maybe with just Barb's words of advice. It can be from anything we talked about or something different. But when
Yeah.
you think about people leading today and navigating today, what's your
Yeah. You know, you said something when we started that I think my word of advice is do the internal work. Do it, whatever that is for you. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be a set path either. I think sometimes we feel like it's going to have to be a tool, right?
yes?
And it doesn't have to be, and there's no set path for this. But really, as if you want to be a leader that has a legacy, know that one, it never stops. The learning never stops. Don't ever think I have a phrase I use, and maybe this is my buzzword is don't get caught in your belly button.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because people just they're obsessed with their belly button and they don't look anywhere else. You think of the baby when they discover their belly button. It's like, I'm so cool. Right?
And then
And
you realize everybody else is staring at theirs.
right. Everybody else has the same belly button and they think they're pretty cool too. And so I think that's the bottom line for me is, do the inner work, find whatever it is that helps you be the best human you could be. And if you're the best human, you will be the best leader you can be. It's that simple.
It's that simple. Thank you so much, Barb. I really appreciate you coming. So fun to talk with you today.
You as
And
well,
thanks
baby.
everyone for
Anytime.
listening. Yeah, well, you're going to be back. I have a feeling. Um, so thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to The Courageous Choice. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review to help get the word out about the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future conversations. If you'd like to know more about gig talent, please visit gigtalentagency.com or email us at podcast@gigtalentagency.com. See you in the next episode.